and I knew Eleanor as an adult, and she did grow to be normal size. I put this little story on my Facebook page in anticipation of this program, and somebody my age from, I think she grew up at Burton, wrote back on Facebook. She said, yeah, every time we would go to Genoa, which is the area where Big Minnie lived, my mom would point out somebody's house and say that her uncle had been sized by this person. So my mother wasn't the only one who knew about Big Minnie and her sizing cures. Even though these stories from Peggy's book and my experience might sound strange to us in 2022, Peggy emphasized in her book that there was a lot of love in the community. Orphan children were taken in by relatives to be raised. And then some children still had their parents and lived with their parents, but they couldn't depend on them for food and clothing and for basic shelter, maybe because of alcoholism or other problems. Those children often walked the roads, and when nighttime came, they would go into the houses where they knew they would be welcomed and crawl into bed with the family's children to spend the night. Peggy's aunt and uncle, Ethel and Shirley, that I knew personally, took in children like this, and they said that they never knew how much food to fix for breakfast until all the children had rolled out of bed in the morning. In their older years, they counted up and they said that they had helped raise about 20 children in addition to their 9 children of their own. Even during Peggy's childhood, and certainly by the time I came along too, times had started changing. Employment opportunities had grown in nearby towns so that you could work for cash wages, and moonshining became a hobby instead of a full-time occupation. With cash wages, people could afford to go to the doctor and go to the hospital. They could afford cars, so they had transportation to go places like that too. The county was able to pave a lot of roads, and that made transportation easier. So with all those changes, people started relying on the doctors instead of the granny women for cures and for midwife services. Peggy says that a lot of times people in this transition period would stop into her mother and have her mother diagnose what was wrong with the baby, but then they'd still take the baby to the doctor. And then eventually they would just bypass the grannies altogether and go to the doctors. So the living room bed for the cures and the childbirth and everything has lost its importance too. Many of the cures and traditions and practices I was just talking about are only memories, and a lot of those are fading away too. But the family ties that held the community together still remain strong. Now, does anybody have any questions? I have a little commercial break. So, okay, let me get to my commercial break then. My family and I have been sponsoring Brock's Gap Heritage Day. This is the 30th one that's going to be coming up in May. The posters that are outside are 2 or 3 of the 150 some posters that I've got on families and communities and churches and schools and activities. You're welcome to come. It's a free event. We're glad to have everybody to come. You can see the first row here are the greeters. Those are some of my aunts and uncles in their 80s and 90s that will greet people as they come in. This year we're going to have 3 programs during the day. One is going to be on the poorhouse, Rockingham County poorhouse. Reverend William Zirk has researched that. Actually, his grandfather and his father were superintendents in the poorhouse, and he literally grew up in the poorhouse since his parents worked there. So he has a lot of information on that I'm sure is going to be very interesting. Then we're having a program on how DNA has helped find the origins of one of the families in the community, the George May family. And the last program will be about Harrison May, who landed on the beach on D-Day, and his experiences with D-Day and his other Army experiences. So Broadway High School is not that far away. If you'd like to come, we'll make you a cousin for the day. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. We appreciate your coming. Now, before you move, better turn some lights on, so let me go grab some lights.